Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is How to Understand Long Talks in English.
This is a big one. It really is. I think this skill is what separates that intermediate plateau from what feels like real professional fluency.
It absolutely is. And honestly, I think this is the topic that probably causes the most anxiety for learners. I was actually thinking about it this morning. I had this flashback to a dinner party years ago when I was really trying to learn French.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling okay. I had the basics down. I could order a coffee, ask for directions, the survival stuff.
You had the toolkit for getting by.
Exactly. But then I'm at this dinner table, and this man starts telling a story. And it's not a short story. It's this long, complicated thing about a ski trip.
Oh, boy.
And at first, I'm with him. I'm catching the keywords: mountain, snow, skiing. I'm nodding. I'm making eye contact. I'm in the game.
You feel like you're part of the conversation?
Totally. But then, maybe a minute and a half in, he makes a quick joke. And aside, everyone at the table laughs. And I didn't get it. But I laughed too, just to fit in.
Of course. The social laugh. We've all done it.
But that split second of distraction, of just focusing on, oh no, I missed a joke, it was fatal. By the time I tuned back into what he was actually saying, he was talking about a helicopter and a hospital, and I had absolutely no idea how we got from the ski slope to the emergency room.
You lost the thread.
Completely. It was gone, and I just spent the next 5 minutes with this, frozen smile on my face, just praying no one would ask me a question.
That frozen smile is... It's a universal symbol for language learners, isn't it? It's that feeling of sudden panic. And I want to pause on that because what you just described, that shift from I'm following along to I am completely and utterly lost, that is not a personal failure.
It feels like one. It feels like I've been studying for years. Why can't I do this?
I know, but it's not. It's a specific cognitive event. It happens when we switch from short interactive conversation to extended passive listening. See, the conversation is like a game of catch.
Okay.
You throw the ball, I throw it back. If you throw it badly, I can adjust. If I don't understand, I can put up my hand and say, wait, what? We can pause the game.
Right. You can ask for clarification.
Precisely. But a long talk, a university lecture, a business presentation, a podcast, that story at the dinner party, that is a freight train. It does not stop for you. It just keeps moving down the track, whether you are on board or not.
And that's the freight train we're going to try and catch today. We're not talking about how to buy a train ticket. We're talking about how to stay on for the whole journey.
Yes. And the most important thing to get across right at the start is that this is a learnable skill. It's a technical skill. It's not some kind of magic talent that some people have and others don't. Fluent speakers just have better systems. They have strategies.
So we can learn those strategies.
We're going to take them apart piece by piece today and show you how to build them for yourself.
Okay, I want to get into the strategies, the how-to, but I think we have to start with the why. Because in that moment at the dinner party, it didn't feel like a strategy problem. It felt like my brain just shut off. Why is listening so much harder than, say, reading the same information?
It all comes down to a concept called cognitive load. But let's get more specific. It's about your working memory.
Okay, break that down for me.
Right. So imagine the part of your brain that's processing information in real time, your working memory, is like a small workbench. And I mean really small. Research suggests it can only hold about 7 items at a time, plus or minus 2.
Wait, 7 things. That's it. That seems incredibly small.
That's the limit for most of us.
Yeah.
Now, when you listen in your native language, the process is almost entirely automatic. Your brain hears a sentence like, the cat sat on the mat. And it doesn't process each word individually.
Right. If I just see a cat on a mat.
Exactly. The whole idea gets compressed into one chunk. It takes up maybe one of your 7 slots on the workbench. So you've got 6 other slots free to think about the speaker's argument or what you want to say next or what you need to pick up from the grocery store.
You have all this extra mental space.
You have a ton of surplus capacity.
Yeah.
But in a second language, that automation is gone. You hear the van cat. Okay, wait, what's cat? Sat. The past tense of sit. On a preposition. All of a sudden, just decoding that one simple sentence is taking up 5, maybe 6 of your 7 slots.
So my whole workbench is just full of individual parts of the sentence. There's no room for anything else.
And that's where the disaster strikes. Because while your workbench is totally full trying to piece together that first sentence, the speaker's already moved on. They're delivering the next sentence. But you have no empty slots. There's nowhere for that new information to go.
So it just bounces off. It doesn't even register.
It literally evaporates. It's not processed. Yeah. This is the core reason you can read a sentence and understand every word, but when you hear it spoken, you miss it. It's not a vocabulary problem. It's a bandwidth problem.
Yeah.
Your system is overloaded.
That explains so much, that feeling of, wait, I know all those words. Why didn't I understand? It's because I was still busy with the last sentence.
Yes. And then it gets worse, because then the emotional part kicks in. Psychologists call it the affective filter. When you realize you've missed something, what happens? What did you feel at that dinner party?
Panic. Just pure panic. My heart started beating faster. I felt my face get hot.
Right. A classic stress response. Your body releases cortisol.
Yeah.
And here's the really cruel part. Anxiety has been shown to reduce your working memory capacity even further. So now, instead of 7 slots on your workbench, you might only have 3 or 4 available.
So the more I panic about not understanding,
the less capable your brain becomes of understanding. It's a complete downward spiral. You get overloaded, you panic, your capacity shrinks, and then you get even more overloaded. That's the fog that rolls into your brain.
that is both terrifying and incredibly comforting. Because it means I'm not broken. My brain is just doing what brains do under extreme load.
You're not broken at all. You're just asking your brain to perform at an Olympic level without training. There's a metaphor I really like for this. Listening in a second language isn't just listening. It's like juggling while riding a unicycle.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
The unicycle is the main thread of the conversation, the central argument or story. You have to keep pedaling forward to maintain your balance. If you stop, you wobble and fall.
Okay, that makes sense. You have to keep up with the flow.
And the balls you're juggling. Those are all the little mental tasks. Recognizing sounds, identifying words, understanding grammar, holding the last sentence in your head.
So in my native language, I'm not on a unicycle. I'm,
Right.
Driving a car?
You're at a luxury sedan with cruise control and lane assist. The whole process is automated. But as a learner, you're on that wobbly unicycle. And at the start of the talk, maybe you're doing okay. You're pedaling, you're juggling. It's hard work, but you're managing.
Right.
But then the speaker says a word you don't know, or they use a complex grammatical structure. That's not a normal ball anymore. That's a bowling ball.
Ah, yes. I've been hit by many of those bowling balls.
And your instinct is to focus everything on that one heavy object. What was that word? Consolidated. What does that mean? You stare at the bowling ball,
And while I'm staring at it?
you stop pedaling,
Yeah.
and you've dropped the other balls. The unicycle wobbles, and because the speaker's still 10 meters down the road, by the time you look up, you've completely fallen off. You've lost the context.
And getting back on a unicycle that's already moving is, well, it's pretty much impossible.
That's the moment.
Yeah.
That's losing the thread. You fixated on a single detail and lost the big picture.
So if the problem is cognitive overload juggling bowling balls on a unicycle, how do we fix it? We can't just get a bigger workbench for our brain.
No, but we can get much, much better at juggling, and we can build the stamina to stay on the unicycle for longer. This brings us to the foundational part of the solution. We have to stop treating listening like a test you pass or fail and start treating it like athletic training.
You mentioned running a marathon earlier.
I did. Think about it. If you haven't run in years, you wouldn't just wake up and try to run 26 miles, would you?
Of course not. I'd be lucky to make it to the end of my street. I'd probably injure myself.
But that is exactly what language learners do all the time. They say, I need to improve my listening. And they immediately put on a 1-hour, super dense documentary on particle physics.
I feel personally attacked right now. I have done that exact thing. Time for some immersion, and then 10 minutes later, my brain has melted and I'm scrolling on my phone.
We all have. It's the weekend warrior approach. It's based on intensity, and it's destined to fail. The principle we need is called progressive overload.
That sounds like something from the gym.
It is. It just means you start with a weight you can actually lift,
Yeah.
and then you gradually add a little bit more. So if you can comfortably listen to and understand a 5-minute YouTube clip right now, your goal is not a 1-hour lecture. Your goal is a 7-minute clip next week, then 10 minutes. You have to build the mental stamina.
Oh, okay, but I have to push back on that a little. Is 15 or 20 minutes a day really enough? It sounds so small. Doesn't fluency require hours and hours of immersion every day?
There's a very common belief, but the neuroscience suggests otherwise. It's not about the total volume in one sitting. It's about the frequency of training. Think of it like building a path in a forest.
Okay.
Walking that path for 15 minutes every single day will create a clear, permanent trail. But a huge 3-hour hike once a week, the forest will just grow back in between. You're building and reinforcing neural pathways. Consistency is what makes them strong and efficient.
So consistency over intensity.
Consistency is the most effective form of intensity over the long term. But, and this is the critical part, those 15 minutes have to be focused. We need to draw a very clear line between active and passive listening.
I think I know where this is going. I'm guilty of a lot of passive listening. Podcasts while I'm driving, news in the background while I'm cooking.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Passive listening is great for getting a feel for the rhythm, the intonation, the music of a language. But it does very little to improve your comprehension skills.
Why not? I mean, I am hearing the words, aren't I?
Sort of. But your brain is an efficiency machine. Your conscious attention is on the road or on chopping onions. So your brain treats the audio as background noise. It doesn't allocate those precious workbench slots to processing it deeply. You're not doing the heavy lifting. You're not building the muscle.
So for this kind of training, we're talking about something different.
We're talking about dedicated, focused, active listening. This means you're sitting down, your phone is in another room, the TV is off. For those 15 minutes, your only job is to listen. You should feel like you're working. You might even be sweating a little. That's where the growth happens.
Okay, so we're committed. We're training like athletes. We're going to do our 15, 20 minutes of active, focused work every day. Now let's get into the game plan. You've broken this down into 3 phases: pre-listening, during listening, and post-listening.
Right, and I'd bet that 95% of learners only do the middle phase. They just hit play and hope for the best.
Which is like showing up to the marathon without warming up, without your running shoes, and without a water bottle.
An excellent analogy. You are setting yourself up to fail. So let's start with phase 1, pre-listening, or what I like to call priming the brain.
Priming, okay, what does that mean?
Think about the absolute elite listeners in the world. Simultaneous interpreters at the United Nations. They're the Olympians. They would never, ever go into a speech cold. They spend hours beforehand priming their brains.
How do they do that?
The main technique is called activating your schema. Your brain stores information in interconnected networks, like a giant mind map. If I say the word beach, your brain instantly activates a whole network of related concepts.
Right. Sand, ocean, sun, waves, seagulls.
Exactly. Now, if you just hit play on a documentary about marine biology, without doing this first, your brain has to scramble to find that ocean file in the basement of your mind while also trying to process new information. You're starting with a disadvantage.
So you want to pull that file out and put it on the desk before you even start.
You want that file open and ready to go. So before you listen, you take literally 2 minutes. Look at the title, The Economics of Renewable Energy. Close your eyes and just brainstorm. Think sun, wind, solar panels, cost, money, green.
You're just warming up the relevant part of your brain.
You're getting the neurons firing. And then you add another layer. I call it vocabulary tasting.
I like that. It sounds much nicer than studying vocabulary.
It is. You're not trying to memorize a list. You just look at the title or description and predict maybe 5 to 10 keywords you think you'll hear. So for that talk on renewable energy,
I'd expect to hear solar, wind, investment, grid, maybe sustainability.
Perfect. So you quickly look them up if you need to. You say them out loud. You remind your brain what they sound like, because recognizing a word you just saw takes a fraction of a second. But processing a word that feels brand new can take several seconds and derail you completely.
That feels like such a simple thing, but I can see how it would make a huge difference.
It's a massive return on investment for 2 minutes of your time. And the final piece of priming is to set a purpose.
My purpose is usually practice my English.
That's too vague. Your brain doesn't know what to do with that. You need to give it a specific mission, a question to answer. For example, I am listening to find out the speaker's main objection to solar power. Or, I need to identify the 3 steps she recommends for businesses.
Ah, so it turns you from a passive receiver of information into an active hunter.
A hunter is the perfect word. You're not just waiting for the information to wash over you. You are actively searching for something specific. It focuses your attention like a laser.
Okay, so we're primed. We've activated our schema, we've tasted the vocabulary, we have our mission, we hit play. We are now in phase 2. During listening, this is where we're on the unicycle.
This is the trench warfare. And the first, most powerful strategy here is something that most learners don't do. It's prediction.
Prediction? You mean guessing?
I mean constantly, actively guessing what the speaker is going to say next. This is something native speakers do unconsciously all the time. Let's try it. I'll start a common phrase. To be or be.
Not to be. Easy.
An apple a day keeps that...
Knocked her away. See? Your brain is a prediction machine. It loves completing patterns. When you're listening in English, you need to turn this machine on deliberately. As you listen, you should be asking yourself, okay, he just stated a problem. What's next? Probably a solution. Or she's listing points. She said firstly, so secondly must be coming soon. But wait, doesn't that take up more mental energy? I'm already struggling just to keep up with what's being said now. You want me to think about the future too.
It feels counterintuitive, but it actually reduces your cognitive load. This is called top-down processing. If you correctly predict what's coming, your brain doesn't have to work as hard to decode it. If you guess, he's about to give an example, and then you hear the words, for instance, your brain gets this little jolt of confirmation. It can relax. It doesn't need to process, for instance. It just confirms the prediction.
And what if I guess wrong?
Even better. The element of surprise makes the information stickier in your memory. You think, oh, I thought he was going to offer a solution, but instead he introduced another problem. That surprise wakes you up and forces you to reevaluate, which deepens your engagement.
So whether you're right or wrong, predicting keeps you leaning forward on the unicycle.
It keeps you pedaling. And to make good predictions, you need to learn to spot the road signs in the language. These are called discourse markers.
These are the words that learners often ignore, right? They don't seem as important as nouns and verbs.
They ignore them at their peril. Words like, however, therefore, in contrast, furthermore.
Or phrases like, to sum up, or the key takeaway is.
Yes. These are the speaker giving you their GPS coordinates. They're telling you, get ready, a U-turn is coming, or we're about to get on the highway. They signal the structure of the argument.
Okay, but a lot of natural speech has filler words too. People say, basically. How do you tell the difference between a meaningful road sign like however and just a verbal tick-tick like?
That is a fantastic and very important question. You need to learn to distinguish between a signal and a stall. A stall like is just the speaker buying time to think. The intonation is usually flat. They're just filling silence. But a signal, a true discourse marker, is delivered with intention. There's often a change in pitch and a slight pause right after it. However, pause when you need to consider the opposite view. Or, in conclusion, pause, there are 3 main points. You need to listen for the music, not just the words.
So when you hear that signal, it's like a trigger. It lets you know what kind of information is coming next.
It gives you permission to organize your thoughts. If you hear, to sum up, you know you can stop worrying about new details and just focus on the main points. It helps you manage your workbench.
Okay, speaking of managing the workbench, let's talk about what I think is the single most important concept in this whole deep dive. The difference between content words and function words.
This is the great liberation. This is the idea that will free you from so much anxiety.
Because my instinct is to try and catch every single word. The of, in, at. I feel like if I miss one, I've failed.
And that instinct is what causes the unicycle to crash. Let me prove it. I'm going to say a pretty dense academic-sounding sentence. Just listen.
Okay, I'm ready.
The subsequent implementation of sustainable agricultural practices has been demonstrably hindered by significant and unforeseen financial constraints.
Okay. My brain immediately went into panic mode. I heard implementation and financial constraints and a lot of noise in between.
Exactly. A learner tries to process every one of those 16 words. But let's do an experiment. Let's throw away all the grammar glue, the prepositions, the articles, the auxiliary verbs. Let's only keep the heavy lifting words. The nouns, the main verbs, the adjectives.
Okay.
That leaves us with implementation. Sustainable.agriculture.hindered. Financial.constraints.
Implementation.sustainable.agriculture.hindered financial constraints.
Do you understand what the original sentence meant?
Yeah, pretty much. Putting green farming into practice was stopped by money problems.
You understood 100% of the meaning while only catching about 40% of the words.
Wow. Let's see, that is genuinely liberating. The function words are just the scaffolding. The content words are the building.
And you are here to see the building. Stop obsessing over the scaffolding. Your brain is incredibly good at filling in the grammatical gaps if you just give it the main pillars. Focus your energy on catching the content words. Let the little words go.
Stop obsessing over the scaffolding.
I love that.
Okay, one more strategy for while we're in the trenches. Note-taking.
A very useful tool, but also a very dangerous one.
Dangerous. How?
Because most people fall into the stenographer trap. They try to write down everything the speaker says, word for word.
I'm guilty of this. I have notebooks full of frantic, half-finished sentences. I'm so afraid I'll forget a detail.
But think about what's happened when you're writing. You are not listening. Your brain cannot simultaneously listen to a new sentence and write down an old one. It's impossible. So for every second you spend writing, you are effectively deaf.
So my attempt to remember more is actually causing me to hear less.
In many cases, yes. The purpose of notes is not to create a transcript. It's to create memory triggers. You should never write full sentences.
So what should I write?
Keywords, symbols, abbreviations, arrows to show connections. If the speaker says, the company's profits increased by 15% last quarter, which led to a rise in stock price, you don't write that sentence. You write, profit a 15% of stock. That's it. It takes 2 seconds and it captures the entire idea.
You're just creating a simple map to jog your memory later, not a detailed report.
Exactly. Your notes should be mostly empty space. If you're looking down at your paper more than you're actively listening, you're doing it wrong.
Okay, wow. We have survived the talk. The speaker says thank you. The applause happens. We are mentally exhausted. We're done.
Absolutely not. If you stop here, you leave most of the learning on the table. Phase 3, the post-listening phase, is where you consolidate your gains.
This is the cool down for the athlete.
It's the most important part. And the first thing you have to do right away is give yourself the summary test.
Okay, what's that?
Can you, either by speaking out loud to yourself or by writing it down, summarize the main argument and the key supporting points of the talk you just heard?
And if I can't do it?
Then you didn't truly understand it.
Ouch. That's a tough standard.
It's a reality check. We often fool ourselves into thinking we understood because we recognize a lot of words. But comprehension is about understanding the structure and the connections between ideas. If you can't summarize it, you miss that structure. And that's not a failure. It's data. It shows you exactly where you need to focus.
So it's like a diagnostic tool. It tells you where your unicycle fell over.
Precisely. And once you know where you fell, you can go back and do what I call the vocabulary harvest. You go back to that specific part of the talk, the part that confused you. You find those bowling ball words that threw you off.
And I look them up in the dictionary.
Yes, but don't just write down the definition. That's a classic mistake. You must write down the word in its original context. Don't just write resilience, the ability to recover quickly. Write the full sentence you heard. We need to build resilience in our coastal infrastructure. Context is everything for memory.
That makes sense. So you learn the word and how it's actually used. Now, you also recommend something that I know people are going to resist. Deep repetition.
They always resist it because it sounds boring.
You're telling me to listen to the same 10-minute talk multiple times? Why would I do that when there's so much other content out there?
Because you're not just listening for content. You're using the same piece of material to train different skills. It's like a Swiss Army knife. I recommend a 4-pass approach.
Okay, lay it on me.
Listen number 1. Just listen for the gist, the main idea. Don't worry about details. Listen number 2. Now you go on a vocabulary hunt. You have a notebook, and you pause every time you hear a word or phrase you don't know. Listen number 3. You focus only on pronunciation and intonation. You might even try shadowing, repeating what the speaker says right after they say it. Listen number 4. You listen only for structure. You ignore the content, and you just listen for those discourse markers. First, however, in conclusion.
So with each pass, you're putting on a different pair of glasses and looking for something different.
Exactly. And I guarantee that deep mastery of one 10-minute talk will improve your overall listening skills more than passively hearing 10 different 1-hour podcasts. You're building deep neural pathways, not just skimming the surface.
It's the difference between digging one deep well versus 10 shallow puddles.
A perfect metaphor. You'll actually find water in the deep well.
Okay, that's a very comprehensive framework. But I think we need to get specific, because a talk is not just a talk. A university lecture is a completely different animal from a casual interview.
Absolutely. The genre dictates the strategy. Let's do a quick run-through. First up, the classic, the academic lecture.
The one that puts students to sleep.
It can, but structurally, it's often the most predictable. It almost always follows the same pattern. Introduction, thesis, statement, point 1 with evidence, point 2 with evidence, point 3, conclusion.
So what's the specific strategy here?
You have to listen for the professor's tell. Professors desperately want you to get the main points. So they signal them very obviously. They'll say things like, and this is the crucial point, or what's important to remember is, or a key definition is.
That's basically them screaming, this will be on the test.
It's a giant, flashing neon sign. When you hear those phrases, you should write down what follows verbatim. Those are the pillars of the entire lecture.
Okay, what about a business presentation?
A totally different world, especially in an Anglophone business culture. The structure is typically inductive, not deductive.
What's the difference?
Deductive, like in academia, builds a case and gives the conclusion at the end. Inductive gives the conclusion right at the start. It's called bottom line up front.
We need to increase our marketing budget by 20%. Here's why.
Exactly. So in a business presentation, the first 2 minutes are the most important. If you're still settling in and miss the opening, you might miss the entire point of the meeting. Your strategy is maximum focus at the beginning. Listen for 3 things: the problem, the proposed solution, and the ask.
The ask being what they want you to approve or do.
Yes. Next up, TED Talks and motivational speeches.
These are generally more entertaining.
They are, but they have their own trap. They're built on narrative and emotion. The trap is to get lost in the details of the personal stories they tell.
Right. The speaker starts talking about a childhood memory of their grandfather, and you're trying to remember the grandfather's name instead of the point of the story.
Precisely. Your question should always be, why are they telling me this story? What is the emotional point they're trying to make? These talks usually have one big idea. Your entire job is to find that one big idea. The stories are just the vehicle.
Don't get distracted by the vehicle. Focus on the destination.
Perfect. And finally, the Wild West of listening. Podcasts and interviews. Like this one.
The hardest genre.
By far. Because they are often unscripted. They are messy. People interrupt each other. They go off on tangents. They make jokes.
So what's the survival strategy here?
First, radical acceptance. Accept that it will be messy and you will miss things. Don't panic when it gets chaotic. Your anchor is the host. The host's job, or in an interview, the interviewer's job, is to bring the conversation back on track. So if the guest goes on a long, rambling tangent, just relax and wait for the host to ask the next question. That question will be your signpost showing you where the main road is again.
Trust the host to guide you back. That's really helpful.
Always trust the host.
Okay, this has been fantastic, but it's still very theoretical. I want to make this concrete. I want to do a walkthrough, a simulation of how this would work in real life.
Let's do it. I'll be your coach.
Okay, so imagine I'm at home. I've got my 15 minutes for my active listening practice. I've chosen a TED Talk. The title is Reimagining Cities for Climate Change. It's 15 minutes long. What do I do first?
Okay, before you hit play, phase 1, prime the brain.
Right, priming. Okay, the topic is cities and climate change. So I'll just take a minute and think. Okay, climate change is heat, floods, storms. Cities are concrete, buildings, cars, people, pollution.
Good. You're activating the schemas. Now, vocabulary tasting. Predict some words.
I'll probably hear carbon emissions, sea level rise, infrastructure, sustainable, and maybe resilience.
Excellent. You've loaded those words into your short-term memory. Last step of priming.
Set a purpose. My mission. Okay, my mission is I will listen to find the speaker's 3 main recommendations for how cities should adapt.
A perfect, specific mission. Now you are ready. Hit play.
Okay, click and play. The speaker starts. She has an American accent, pretty clear. She says, our urban centers are on the front lines of a global crisis. I understand that. I'm feeling confident. The unicycle is stable.
You're pedaling.
Then she says, we must fundamentally rethink our approach to urban hydrology and thermodynamics.
Uh-oh. Bowling balls.
Huge bowling balls. Hydrology, thermodynamics. I have no idea what those mean. I'm starting to panic. My instinct is to hit pause and look them up.
Don't you dare hit pause. What did we say?
Let the ball go. Don't focus on the word I missed.
Exactly. Ignore those words. They are scaffolding.
Yeah.
Listen for the next content word you do understand.
Okay. She's saying something about water and heat.
There you go. Now you know what hydrology and thermodynamics are about. Water and heat. The context explained it for you. Keep pedaling.
Okay. She says, my first proposal concerns permeable surfaces.
Stop. What did you just hear?
First proposal. That's a discourse marker. That's recommendation number 1.
Bingo. So you grab your notebook, you write 1, and then the word permeable surfaces, even if you don't know what permeable means.
Got it. Then she explains it's about letting rainwater soak into the ground instead of running into drains. So I add a little note. Let's water in.
Perfect. You're doing great. What's next?
She talks for a few minutes, gives examples. Then she says, secondly, we need a massive expansion of our urban canopy. Okay. Secondly, that's number 2. I write 2. Urban canopy. I guess from the context, that means more trees.
You're a pro at this. You're cruising.
And then my cat jumps on my desk and knocks over my water.
Life happens.
So there's chaos for about 30 seconds. And by the time I get back to listening, I've clearly missed the third point. The speaker is now in her conclusion saying, by implementing these strategies, we can create cities that are both livable and resilient. Applause. The talk is over.
Okay, so how do you feel?
Honestly, a little frustrated. I missed one of the 3 points I was looking for. I feel like I failed my mission.
Reframe that immediately. You got 2 out of the 3 main points on your first listen, through technical jargon and a cat-related disaster. That is a huge win. That's a passing grade. Now we go to phase 3.
Post-listening, summary test. Okay. The speaker argued that cities need to adapt to climate change by first, using surfaces that absorb water, and second, by planting a lot more trees. The third point.
Yeah, fantastic. You've identified the gap in your knowledge with perfect precision. Now what do you do?
Now I'm allowed to rewind. I go back to where I think I got lost. I listen again just to that section.
Man.
She said, thirdly, we must decentralize our power grids.
There it is. You filled the gap. Now you have the complete structure. You can do a quick search for decentralized power grid and add it to your vocabulary harvest.
That whole process felt so much more structured and less scary. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about having a strategy for when things inevitably go wrong.
It is a game of recovery, not a game of perfection. That's active listening.
That simulation really clicked for me. Okay, to wrap up, let's talk about some of the more advanced tools and mindsets. The big one is subtitles. To use them or not to use them.
The great subtitle debate. The source of many arguments.
My hand is up. I use them all the time. I feel like it helps me catch words I would have missed.
It does help you catch the words. But it does so by turning a listening exercise into a reading exercise.
I knew you were going to say that.
Your brain's visual processing is faster and more dominant than its auditory processing. If the text is there, you will read it. It's almost impossible not to.
Yeah.
You're not training your ear, you're training your eye.
So what's the rule? Never use them. That seems harsh.
The ultimate goal is to function without them. But you can use them as training wheels. I recommend a 5-stage process to wean yourself off them.
Okay, the 5 stages of subtitle grief.
Stage 1. Subtitles in English are on N. But you make a rule. You must pause and repeat at least 5 sentences out loud per minute.
Subtitles on N, but you cover the bottom third of your screen with a sticky note. You only peek when you are truly desperately lost.
You only turn subtitles on for the hard parts, maybe for your second listen when you're vocabulary harvesting.
Subtitles are OFF completely for the first listen. This is the goal.
You only use subtitles after you've listened, to go back and check your understanding. You use the transcript as an answer key, not a crutch.
And what about subtitles in your native language?
Never. That is not language learning. That is entertainment. You are practicing reading in your own language. It'd have close to 0 benefit for your English listening skills.
Okay, that's a hard and fast rule. I like it. And one last advanced technique you mentioned earlier, shadowing.
The ultimate workout. This is for when you're feeling confident.
Just to remind everyone, this is repeating what the speaker says as they say it, like an echo.
Yes, you're speaking about half a second behind them. It is incredibly difficult.
I've tried it. It feels like my brain is short-circuiting.
It is cognitively demanding because it forces your brain to operate at native speed. There is no time to translate in your head. You have to bypass that slow, manual process and create a direct link from your ear to your mouth. It builds fluency, pronunciation, and processing speed all at once.
But it's definitely not for day one.
Definitely not. That's a marathon-level technique. Start with the 5-minute active listening sessions. Build your foundation first.
This has been such a comprehensive deep dive. We've covered the biology of the workbench, the unicycle analogy, the 3 phases of listening, genre strategies. It's a complete toolkit. But I know what's going to happen to our listeners. They're going to be motivated. They're going to try this for a week, and then they're going to hit a wall. They'll have a bad day where they listen to something and feel like they understood absolutely nothing, and they'll want to quit.
That moment is inevitable. It's called hitting a plateau. And I want to leave everyone with a crucial reframe for that feeling. When it feels like you're not making any progress or even going backwards, that is often the moment when the most important learning is actually happening.
How is that possible? It feels like failure.
Your brain's consolidating. It's like when your computer slows down because it's installing a major operating system update in the background. On the surface, things are sluggish. But underneath, a massive upgrade is taking place. Your brain is busy rewiring, strengthening connections, and automating processes. You're not stuck. You're upgrading.
So when it feels hard, that's a sign that you're pushing at the edge of your abilities, which is where growth occurs.
That's the only place growth occurs. So be patient with the process. Have some self-compassion. Some days your brain will be tired. Some talks will be too fast. Some accents will be too difficult. That's okay. The only way to truly fail at this is to stop pedaling.
Keep the unicycle moving, even if it's wobbly.
Always keep it moving.
This has been an absolute masterclass. I feel so much more equipped to tackle that next long talk and hopefully avoid the frozen smile.
You're ready. You have the tools.
Thank you so much for breaking all of this down for us.
It was my pleasure.
And for everyone listening, here is your mission, should you choose to accept it. Find one short talk this week, 5 to 7 minutes. Before you listen, prime your brain. As you listen, try to predict what's coming and hunt for those content words. And afterwards, see if you can give yourself the summary test. Just try the process.
And remember to be kind to yourself while you do it.
Please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll see you in the next deep dive. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is How to Tell a Story Clearly in English.
It's great to be here. You know, as I was going through all the material for this, all the research and notes we put together, I had a bit of a personal revelation.
Oh.
I think I might be what you'd call a tangent offender.
Yeah.
A serial one even.
A tangent offender. I think I know a few of those. We all do, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you really dig into the psychology of attention and the structural breakdowns of narrative that we've been looking at, I'm realizing just how often I probably hold people conversationally hostage without even knowing.
Oh, the hostage situation. I have definitely been on the receiving end of that. You're at a party, right?
Yeah.
Someone starts telling you a story about, I don't know, getting a flat tire.
Uh-huh.
And 20 minutes later, they're somehow explaining the entire family tree of their mechanic. And you're physically scanning the room for an escape route.
You can see the light go out in their eyes. They've completely lost the plot, and so have you. But the thing is, and this is what our deep dive is really about today, this isn't just about being boring.
Right. It's more than that.
It's actually a cognitive failure. It's a failure to properly organize information, to package it in a way that the listener's brain can actually, process it.
And that's really the mission for today, isn't it? We're not just talking about how to be funny or how to be dramatic. We're looking at the actual mechanics of clarity.
The nuts and bolts.
How do you take that chaotic, sprawling movie that's playing in your own head and transmit it into someone else's head without 90% of the signal getting lost in static?
And we have some really fascinating material to pull from for this. We've got insights from classical rhetoric, the whole 3-act structure from screenwriting. We have psychological concepts about pattern recognition.
And some really practical, almost like toolkits on how to edit yourself in real time as you're speaking. But let's start with the big question. Why is this so hard? I mean, as a species, we are biologically hardwired for stories.
We are. It's how we make sense of the world.
We've been doing this since we were painting on cave walls. We spend our weekends binge-watching Netflix. We literally live and breathe narrative. So why, when it's our turn to talk, do so many of us struggle to produce a clear one?
A lot of it boils down to something called the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge, okay.
When you're the one telling the story, you have access to 100% of the context. You know what the street smelled like. You know you were feeling a little hungry at the time. You know about your own complicated history with your mother that frames the whole event.
You know everything.
The listener knows.
Yeah.
Zero. Absolutely nothing. They're a blank slate.
So you're basically drowning in data, and the real challenge is figuring out which tiny bits to hand over and which, 99% to just leave out.
That is the entire game. And most people's default setting, when they don't think about it, is what I call chronological dumping.
Ugh, yes. I woke up, and then I brushed my teeth, and then I got in the car, and then I turned on the radio.
The dreaded and then trap.
It's a story killer.
It just destroys all momentum. Because clarity, and this is a key takeaway from our research, it isn't about simplicity. It's about relevance.
Relevant.
It's about curation. One of the sources framed it in a way I found really profound. A clear story is actually an act of empathy.
Huh. Empathy. How so?
You have to constantly be simulating the listener's mind. You have to be asking yourself, do they know who Steve is yet? Do they care that it was raining? Does this detail move things forward, or is it just noise?
So if you're not actively filtering, you're not storytelling, you're just listing facts in order.
You're just making sounds. Which brings us to the first big area we need to cover. Before you even open your mouth to tell a story, the consensus is that you have to do some pre-work.
Right. This is our favorite one, the pre-work. And it sounds like this is where the battle is usually won or lost.
It really is. Most of the work happens before you say a single word.
I like this idea I came across of the verbal rough draft. Most of us, I think, use the conversation itself as our rough draft. We sort of ramble our way towards the point, hoping we find it eventually.
Which is, let's be honest, pretty painful for everyone involved.
For everyone.
To avoid that, let's use the Rome example from our notes. This is a really fantastic illustration of the concept.
Okay.
Imagine a guy, let's call him Dave. He just got back from a trip to Rome, and he wants to tell his friends about it. He had a pretty traumatic experience where he got completely lost.
Okay, so Dave's in Rome. He's lost. It's chaotic. He's probably stressed out.
Exactly. So Dave starts talking. He says, man, what a trip. So first, the flight was delayed, and then the taxi driver from the airport was so rude, and the hotel room was. It was smaller than I thought. He's just recounting the timeline.
He's doing the chronological dump.
He is. But if you were to stop Dave right there and ask him, Dave, hold on. What is this story actually about?
He'd probably just look at you confused and say, it's about my trip to Rome.
And that's the trap. My trip to Rome is a topic. It is not a story. A story needs a theme, a point, a central idea.
Okay, so what would a theme be in this case?
Well, is the story about how he, an inexperienced traveler, learned to be self-reliant and navigate a foreign city? Is it a story about the unexpected kindness of a stranger who finally helped him find his way? Or is it maybe a funny story about how, in his desperation, he stumbled upon the single greatest slice of pizza he's ever eaten in his life?
Ah, I see. Because if the story is ultimately about that life-changing pizza...
Then I do not need to hear about the rude taxi driver.
Unless the taxi driver was the one who, I don't know, sneered at him and said, tourists like you will never find the real Rome, which then sets up his triumphant discovery of the pizza.
Now you're thinking like a storyteller. In that case, the taxi driver isn't just a random detail. He's the villain. He provides the contrast for the eventual victory. But you see the point. You cannot select which details to include until you know what the point of the story is.
This directly leads into what our notes call the one-sentence test.
This is a fantastic, if a little brutal, filter. But it's so effective. Before you launch into a story, you should be able to articulate its emotional core in a single sentence.
So not, this is a story about when I went to Rome.
No. It would be something like, this is a story about how going to Rome and getting hopelessly lost taught me that embracing uncertainty is the best way to truly find yourself.
Wow. Okay, that gives you a North Star, a filter for everything.
It does. If a detail you're about to share doesn't serve that specific sentence, it probably needs to be cut. It reminds me of what they teach you in basic essay writing, right? You have a thesis statement. Everything else is just supporting evidence.
It seems almost restrictive, but I can see how it would actually be freeing.
It is, because once you have that sentence, that theme, you can start to do something really powerful, which is mapping out the emotional arc.
The emotional arc. This is something professional writers and filmmakers obsess over, but we almost never think about it in just, regular conversation.
We don't. And we should. This is about consciously deciding how you want your audience to feel at each stage of the story. It's not just a sequence of events. It's a planned sequence of emotions.
Give me an example.
Okay, for Dave's story. Do you want the listener to start off feeling curious, then get anxious and worried as he gets more lost, and finally feel a sense of relief and triumph when he finds his way?
Or maybe you want a different arc. Happy that he's on vacation, then confused and a bit scared, then enlightened when he has his big realization.
Precisely. If you don't know the emotional destination, you can't possibly drive the bus. You'll just be swerving all over the road.
And this map dictates everything. So if I want them to feel anxious, that's when I need to slow down the part where he's lost. I need to describe the alleys getting narrower, the sun going down, the battery on his phone blinking red.
You linger in the tension. But if the point of the story is that it was a funny misadventure, you'd do the opposite. You'd speed through that part, make it fast and slapstick, focus on his own silly mistakes.
You're controlling the pacing based on that emotional map. So what are the core elements we need to identify in this pre-work phase?
There are 3 essentials. First, and most importantly, identify the climax.
The peak moment,
Yes.
the turning point.
Yes. Where is the moment of highest tension or the biggest revelation? This seems obvious, but so many people just Yeah, they miss it, they bury the lead, or they just mention it in passing.
Why they get so excited they rush right past it.
They sail right by it. Let's go back to the pizza. If the climax is finding this incredible, life-altering pizza place, you have to build the stakes. You need to describe the hunger, the exhaustion, the despair. You have to make the audience desperate for that pizza too.
So that when he finally tastes it, we feel the relief with him.
If you haven't established the problem, the hunger and the feeling of being lost, the solution, the climax, has no power. Everything in the story have to be a vector pointing directly at that peak.
Okay, so that's element 1, the climax. What's number 2?
The second is understanding your audience's needs. This goes right back to that idea of empathy.
This is about context, right?
It is. It's asking yourself, what is the absolute minimum information my audience needs to understand the stakes of this story? What is essential context versus what's just decorative fluff?
For example, does the audience need to know that Dave's trip happened on a Tuesday?
Almost certainly not. But do they need to know that Dave had just been laid off from his job 2 days before this trip?
Ooh, yes. If the story's about him feeling lost in life and then finding direction, then yes, the fact that he's unemployed raises the stakes immensely. It adds a whole other layer.
That's a great filter to use for any detail. Ask yourself, does this piece of information raise the stakes? If the answer is no, it's a candidate for deletion.
And the third element is the resolution.
You have to know what the new normal is. We'll get into the details of this when we talk about structure, but in your own mind, you have to know where you are landing the plane. You can't just start the story and hope an ending appears.
Okay, this is a fantastic foundation. So let's shift from the planning phase to the construction phase. You've done the pre-work. You know your theme, your climax, your emotional arc. Now you actually have to build the house.
This is segment 2, the architecture of a story.
And it seems like no matter what kind of story you're telling, everyone comes back to the classic 3-act structure.
They do. And I know some people might hear that and think, come on, I'm just telling my friend about my weekend. I don't need a full Hollywood script structure.
It sounds overly complicated.
It can sound that way, but it's not about being rigid. It's about recognizing how our brains are wired. We are pattern recognition machines. We crave order. And whether it's a 2-hour blockbuster movie or a 30-second joke you tell at the water cooler, our brains expect a beginning, a middle, and an end.
And if you jumble that order or leave one part out,
you create what psychologists call cognitive friction. The listener's brain has to work twice as hard just to follow along, and most of the time they'll just give up and tune out.
So let's break it down, starting with Act 1, the beginning, the setup and the hook.
The biggest mistake people make right here at the start is what I call the warm-up.
The throat clearing.
Exactly. People start with, I was thinking about this the other day, and it sort of reminded me of this time. I think I was younger, maybe.
And I'm already gone. I'm checking my phone.
You've lost me. You're warming up your engine while I'm already looking for the next exit.
Yeah.
You have to launch. Compare that kind of opening to this. I never thought a simple sandwich could end my marriage.
Okay, I'm in. I am 100% listening. How? What kind of sandwich? What happened?
You see, it plants what's called a curiosity gap. It opens a loop in the listener's brain that they now have a desperate biological need to close. The goal of the beginning is not to dump information. It is to buy attention for the next 30 seconds.
And one of the most effective ways to do that, according to a lot of these sources, is a technique called in media res.
Which is just Latin for in the middle of things.
So don't start when the alarm clock rings in the morning.
No. Start with the car crash. Start with the shouting match. Start right where the action is, where the heat is.
My favorite example of this is just the opening line. And that's when the turkey hit the wall.
Perfect. It's perfect because immediately I have a dozen questions. Whose turkey? Why was it airborne? Who threw it? What wall are we even talking about?
And you can always backtrack to fill in the context.
Of course. Once you have my attention, you can say, now, to understand why a 15-pound turkey was flying across the dining room, you first have to understand my Uncle Bob.
Which is so much more engaging than starting with, let me tell you about my Uncle Bob. He was born in 1954 in Ohio.
You've given the listener a compelling reason to care about Uncle Bob. You've established the status quo, a normal Thanksgiving dinner, by showing us the moment it shattered. The stakes are immediately clear.
Okay, so we're hooked. We've survived the beginning. Now we enter the danger zone, the middle, Act 2. This is where most stories go to die.
The muddy middle.
This is where the cousin's dog's veterinarian shows up for no reason.
It is. But there is a golden rule for the middle. And I honestly think this is one of the most valuable actionable pieces of advice in this entire deep dive.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's this. Everything in the middle of your story must either raise the stakes or reveal character.
That's the razor. If a detail doesn't do one of those two things, it's out.
It's gone. Let's apply it. Let's use the blue backpack example. You're telling a story about getting lost on a hike. You mentioned that you forgot your water bottle. Does that raise the stakes?
Oh, absolutely. That introduces a ticking clock. Thirst, dehydration, survival. Keep it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that your backpack was a lovely shade of royal blue. Does that raise the stakes?
No,
Does it reveal anything important about your character?
not really. It's just a blue backpack. So cut it.
Cut it. It's clutter. The listener's brain will hold on to that detail, that blue backpack, assuming it's going to be important later. When it never pays off, you've wasted their cognitive energy and, frankly, you've broken a bit of their trust.
But wait, what if I just want to, paint a picture for the listener? Isn't setting a scene with visual details a good thing?
It is a good thing, but the details have to be purposeful. There's a nuance here. If, at the end of the story, the rescue helicopter spots you because that bright blue backpack stood out against the gray rocks,
Then the color is crucial. It becomes a plot point.
it becomes what's known as Chekhov's gun, the famous playwriting rule.
Yeah.
You show a rifle hanging on the wall in Act 1, it had better go off by Act 3.
If the blue backpack saves your life, you establish its color early. If it's just a backpack, its color doesn't matter.
Precisely.
I want to touch on something else about the middle. It's this distinction between and then versus therefore.
Oh, this is a game changer. This idea was famously articulated by the creators of the show South Park, of all people. They said, if you review your story and you can link all your scenes with the words and then, you have a boring story.
I went to the store and then I bought some milk and then I drove home.
It's just a list, a chronological report. There's no internal logic, no momentum.
So what's the alternative?
You should be able to connect your story beats with the words therefore or but. These words create a chain of causality.
Give me the example.
I went to the store to buy milk, but they were completely sold out. Therefore, I had to go to the little bodega across town. But as I was crossing the street, I ran into my ex-girlfriend, who I haven't seen in 10 years.
Wow. Okay, that's a plot. Each event is a direct reaction to the one before it. It feels inevitable, not random. Because this happened, this had to happen next.
It creates narrative drive. It pulls the listener along because each beat causes the next one. And that momentum is what carries us all the way to the end. Act 3, the climax and the resolution.
And the main piece of advice here seems to be, don't rush it.
Please do not summarize the climax. You've spent 5, maybe 10 minutes building up to this huge confrontation with your boss. Do not just say, so yeah, I went in and told him off and it was fine.
You just skipped the whole movie. That is the scene we all came to see.
You have robbed the audience the emotional payoff you promised them. This is the moment to slow down time. Live in that moment. Describe the sweat on your palms as you reached for the doorknob. Describe the way the fluorescent light glinted off the vein popping in his forehead. Describe the heavy silence that hung in the air after you finally spoke your piece.
The tension is the story. The rest of it was just the setup for this moment.
100%. And then after the climax, you have the resolution. This is the new normal.
And the key here is to keep it brief.
Very brief. The energy of a story dissipates extremely quickly after the climax. So don't linger. Just wrap it up. Show us quickly how the world is different now because of what happened. You don't have that job anymore, or your relationship with your boss is forever changed.
What about the theme? Do we need to spell it out like one of Aesop's fables? And the moral of the story is?
You should proceed with caution there. Sometimes an explicit theme can work. A simple, and I realized right then that pride really does come before a fall. It can put a nice, neat button on it.
But it can also feel a bit preachy.
It can. More often than not, if you've told the story well, the audience already feels the lesson. They've inferred it from the events. Stating it out loud can sometimes feel like you're underestimating their intelligence.
So a good rule of thumb is to trust the audience.
Always, always trust your audience.
Okay, so we have a solid structure, a blueprint. But a house is more than just framing. It needs furniture, paint, texture. It needs to feel lived in. This brings us to segment 3, the art of detail.
This is all about the selection process. Detail is the absolute lifeblood of good storytelling. But it's also where clarity so often dies. It's a victim of overload.
The key seems to be focusing on sensory detail.
Yes, this is all about grounding your story in physical reality for the listener. Don't just say, the room was messy. That's an abstract judgment. Your definition of messy could be completely different from mine.
So what's the alternative?
Give me specific sensory information. Give me a stack of greasy pizza boxes in the corner, and coffee cups with 3-day-old rings on the table, and the faint smell of sour milk when you walked in.
Ugh. Okay, now I'm there, and I want to leave. It creates a visceral reaction.
And that's the point. But notice how those specific details also work to reinforce a mood of, say, neglect or depression. If the story was about visiting your grandmother for nostalgic, heartwarming memory, you wouldn't mention sour milk.
Right. You'd mention the smell of cinnamon from the kitchen or the feel of the worn, smooth wood of her rocking chair.
Exactly. The details aren't random. They are working for you. They should be doing double duty, setting the physical scene and the emotional tone at the same time.
And this ties into the idea of using specifics over generalities.
Always. I ate breakfast is a forgettable fact. I ate 2 pieces of burnt toast and drank the last of the stale coffee. Now I am in that kitchen with you having a bad morning.
Specificity creates memory hooks for the listener.
But there has to be a limit, right? You don't want to describe the fork and the spoon and the pattern on the napkin and the tablecloth. No, absolutely not. That's the overload we talked about. You don't describe every single item on the table. You select the 1 or 2 items that capture the essence of the moment. The burnt toast tells us everything we need to know about the quality of that particular morning.
What about applying this to characters? How do you make the people in your story feel real without just, reading their biography?
It's the classic writing advice. Show, don't tell. Don't tell me John is a very organized person. That's boring. Show me John alphabetizing his spice rack on a Saturday afternoon.
That paints a much more vivid and memorable picture.
And dialogue is such a powerful tool for this. Contrast these 2 ways of conveying the same information. Version 1, she told me not to worry.
Okay, a bit flat.
Version 2, she grabbed my shoulders, looked me right in the eye and said, listen to me, we're going to be okay.
Yeah, the second one gives me chills. It reveals the intensity of the moment, the nature of their relationship, the level of care. It's a whole scene.
And it's so much more memorable. It adds texture and depth.
So just like with plot points, we have a test of relevance for details too.
It's the removal test. If you took a specific detail out, if you removed the burnt toast from the story, would the story still make sense and have the same emotional impact? If the answer is yes, then that detail is a candidate for being cut. But if the burnt toast is the reason you were in such a foul mood during your big work meeting, then it's a crucial detail and it has to stay.
I get it. Every detail has to earn its place in the story. So now let's talk about something really interesting, which is time. Because in a story, we're not bound by linear time. We can control it. This is segment 4. Controlling time and pacing.
This is what we call the accordion effect. You have to learn when to expand a moment and when to compress time.
I see people get this wrong all the time. They tend to rush through the most important moments, I think, because they get nervous.
It's totally driven by anxiety. Let's go back to that story about confronting a toxic boss. That confrontation is the climax. But many people, out of nervousness, will just say, so I went into his office and I told him to stop, and he did.
We mentioned this earlier, but it bears repeating. You're skipping the best part.
You are. You need to slow down. The more emotionally significant the moment, the more time you should spend describing it. As the storyteller, you need to expand that moment like an accordion.
Describe the walk down the hallway.
The sound of your own heart pounding in your ears, the feel of the cold brass doorknob in your sweaty hand, the silence when you first entered the room. You have to let the audience live inside that tension with you.
But then, just as importantly, you have to know when to speed up.
Yes, you have to compress the boring parts. This is called narrative summary. If the next part of the story happens 3 days later at your friend's apartment, we do not need a play-by-play of your drive over there.
We don't need the traffic report.
No. Just say, 3 days later, I was sitting on her couch. You skip the drive, the parking, finding the key, walking up the stairs, unless something narratively vital happened on the stairs.
So compress the boring stuff, expand the interesting stuff. What about the use of silence, the pause?
The power of the pause is one of the most underutilized tools in oral storytelling. A well-placed pause just before a major revelation builds an incredible amount of suspense. And a pause after a punchline is essential to let the laughter actually happen. If you just talk right through it, you kill the joke.
And what's the written equivalent of a pause?
Short sentences, paragraph breaks, using white space on the page. It achieves the same effect visually. It forces the reader to slow down and take a breath.
Now, what about bigger jumps in time, like flashbacks or flash forwards 2 weeks earlier?
The rule is to signal them very, very clearly. Don't make the audience guess where or when we are. Use simple signposts like, meanwhile, back at the office, or what I didn't know at the time was at 2 weeks earlier.
And you had a really specific warning in the notes about something called the museum logic gap. What's that?
This is about maintaining logical progression, even when you jump in time or place. If you say to a listener, I got locked out of my house, so I went to the museum, their brain immediately hits a snag.
Yeah, my first thought is, why the museum? Why not call a locksmith? Why not go to a neighbor's house? It feels random.
And while the listener's brain is stuck on that why,
Yeah.
you've already moved on with your story, and they've missed the next part. You've created a logic gap. You have to bridge it for them.
So you'd say something like,
You'd say, I got locked out of my house, and I knew my roommate wouldn't be back for at least 4 hours. I needed to kill some time somewhere warm, so I decided to go to the museum.
Now the jump makes perfect sense. It connects the dots.
It maintains the trust between the storyteller and the listener, and that trust is essential. If I start to feel like you're leaving important things out or making these weird, illogical jumps, my brain disengages.
Okay, let's move on to the actual people in our stories. Segment 5, the cast of characters.
Managing the characters in a story, especially a spoken one, can be very tricky. You want to avoid what we call the Sister Sarah balance issue.
What exactly is that?
It's the challenge of giving just the right amount of information. On one hand, if you just start talking about Sarah, and we don't know who she is, it's too vague. On the other hand, we absolutely do not need her full resume.
Right. This is my sister, Sarah. She's 34. She's a corporate lawyer. She has 2 cats named Mittens and Paws. She loves knitting.
It's way too much information. It brings the story to a grinding halt. The solution is to use only the most relevant context. Just say, my sister Sarah, you know, the lawyer who lives out in Portland.
Done. That gives us her relationship to you, her profession, which might imply a certain personality type, and her location. All we need to know for now.
What if you have a story with a ton of people, like a big wedding or a chaotic dinner party?
Crowd control. This is crucial. You have to limit the cast of named characters. Don't try to name all 12 people at the dinner party. Focus on the 2 or 3 who are actually important to the plot.
And what do you do with everyone else?
You group them. They just become the other guests. You can say, the other guests all laughed, or a murmur went through the crowd. We don't need to know that Bob, Steve, and Mary all laughed individually.
And for the few key players you do name, it's helpful to use character tags.
What are those?
They're just little distinct identifiers that help the audience keep track of who is who, especially in a story that's only being heard. My manager, the one with the big gray beard, or my cousin who is notoriously always late.
It helps create a little visual thumbnail in the listener's mind. And of course, there's consistency.
This is important. A character shouldn't suddenly change their core personality midway through the story, unless that transformation is the point of the story. If your timid cousin suddenly stands up and starts screaming at a waiter, we need to understand the events that led to that change. Otherwise, the audience will just feel confused.
It breaks the reality you've built.
Okay, let's look at the very start and the very end. The bookends. Segment 6. Opening and closing strategies. We talked a bit about the hook, but let's get really specific on how to open strong. There are a few classic powerful maneuvers. First, start with action. The moment I saw the bear running towards our campsite, bang, you are right in the middle of the drama.
I like this one. Start with a question. Have you ever had to fire your own best friend?
That's so powerful because it immediately engages the listener's own empathy and memory. They start searching their own mental files for a related experience. It makes it personal.
Or start with a striking sensory detail. It was a letter written in green ink on paper that smelled faintly of peppermint.
Ooh, I want to know everything about that letter. Who wrote it? Why? What does it say?
And the big one to avoid.
The announcement. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story now about something that happened to me.
Just tell the story.
Just tell it. It's like a comedian walking on stage and saying, I am now going to tell you a joke.
Yeah.
It just kills the magic.
All right, now let's flip to the other side. Satisfying closings. I'm a big fan of the technique called bookending.
It's such an elegant and satisfying technique. It just means connecting your ending back to an image, a question, or an idea that you introduced in the very beginning. If you started with the image of a broken compass, maybe you end with the image of finding a new one. It provides a sense of symmetry and completion that is deeply satisfying to the human brain. It feels like the loop has been closed.
What are some of the common mistakes people make right at the finish line?
The first is the trailing off, So, yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. It just deflates the entire story. All that work, building tension, and then it just fizzles. You have to stick the landing with confidence.
The second one is the over-explanation.
Yes, turning the end of your story into a 10-minute philosophical lecture about the meaning of life.
Let the story do the work. If you told a powerful story about the importance of honesty, you don't need a sermon on honesty at the end. We got it.
And maybe the worst offender of all, the false ending. This is when someone says, and that's how I finally got home. And then they pause and say, oh, wait, I forgot to mention that the car was on fire the whole time.
No, that completely undermines the impact. You broke the ending. If the car was on fire, that's not a detail you just forgot to mention.
You have to plan your exit. A great piece of advice is to know your last sentence before you even say your first sentence.
That's a high bar, but I can see why it's so important. Okay, so we've built our story. For our final segment, let's talk about how to polish it. Segment 7, refining and adapting.
The first thing to consider here is that the medium matters. How you tell a story orally is different from how you tell it in writing.
How so?
If you're telling a story out loud, you have so many more tools. Your voice, you can whisper, you can shout, you can change your pace, you have eye contact, you have gestures. You can get away with a story that's a little messier or uses more slang because your performance can carry it.
But the major downside is that the audience can't rewind.
Exactly. So your timeline, your cause and effect chain, has to be crystal clear. With a written story, on the other hand, you can build in more complexity and density, but you lose tone of voice. So all the emotion has to be conveyed purely through word choice and punctuation.
Adapting to your specific audience is huge, too.
It's everything. A story you tell to a close friend can be full of inside jokes and assumed knowledge. That exact same story, told in a professional setting like a job interview, needs way more context, more formal language, and probably different theme emphasized. You're not changing the facts of the story, you're just changing the packaging to fit the recipient.
And then there's the practice loop. You really advocate for telling a story multiple times.
You have to. Pay attention to your audience. Notice where they laugh. Notice where their eyes glaze over or where they pick up their phones.
Yeah.
That's invaluable data.
It's like how a stand-up comedian works out a new set. They don't just write it and then perform it on the big TV special. They try it out in small clubs for months, tweaking and refining it based on the audience's reaction every single night.
That's the perfect analogy, and part of that loop should be recording yourself. I know it's painful to listen to your own voice, but it's the fastest way to catch your verbal tics, all your ums and ahs and likes and repetitive phrases.
And you shared a magic question to ask for feedback.
Yes. Instead of asking, did you like my story, which will almost always get you a polite yes, ask a listener this. What do you think that story was really about?
Oh, that's good.
Their answer is the ultimate test. If they say, oh, it was a funny story about a dog, but you intended to tell a profound story about redemption, then you know you have a problem. The signal didn't get through the noise. You need to go back and revise.
That's the ultimate test of clarity. And finally, a quick word on word choice.
This is the final polish. Strengthen your verbs. Instead of saying someone walked quickly, say they dashed or scurried or scrambled.
Instead of saying you were very scared,
say you were terrified or petrified or rattled. These words carry more emotional weight, and they paint a much sharper picture in the listener's mind. They're high-definition words.
This has been absolutely fantastic. It really fundamentally changes the way you look at a simple conversation. It's not just chatting. It's architecture. It's a craft.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And when you learn the principles and get it right, it feels like magic.
So let's just do a lightning fast recap for everyone listening.
Okay. Number 1, do the pre-work. Know what your story is actually about before you start. Number 2, structure is your friend. Give us a clear beginning, middle, and end.
Select specific sensory details that serve the story and the mood, control the pacing, slow down for the emotional moments, and speed up through the boring stuff.
And always, always respect your audience by being clear, empathetic, and by knowing where you're going.
The big takeaway for me is that clarity doesn't kill creativity. It's the thing that enables it. It's what allows the listener to actually step into your shoes and feel what you felt. And at the end of the day, that's the whole point, isn't it?
That's the currency of human connection.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been our deep dive into the art of clear storytelling. Like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
We'll see you next time.